Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophets Speak. This is Saul Weinreb, the host of the podcast, and today we are studying Jeremiah, the prophet Yirmiyahu, 1b. That's the second part of chapter 1 of Yirmiyahu. In the last chapter, we studied, we learned about Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, learned about who he was, when he lived, when he said his prophecies. Today we are going to study the call to prophecy of Jeremiah, the call upon which he received his mission to be a prophet to the people. So we're going to hear Yirmiyahu's presumably first time God spoke to him, and what happened and the conversation between the prophet and God regarding his mission. I would like to point out that of the major prophets, we have many times, of the other major prophets, where we see their call to prophecy. And it makes one think a lot about the different circumstances and how that conversation went, and what vision did they see, and how did they react, and how did God respond to their reactions. Here in Yirmiyahu, so for example, the most famous, of course, being the call to prophecy of Moses in Exodus, which is to be found in Exodus chapter 3, the famous time of the burning bush. So the first thing is that in that particular case, we have a very elaborate story and a vision that Moshe saw. He saw a burning bush, so he was already being exposed to a miraculous sight, and to a sight of a lot of drama. God gave him a long speech about what it was that he wanted him to do, and Moshe argued back and said, who am I to do this? I'm not any, I don't have the skills. I'm not. No one's going to listen to me. The people don't know who God is. What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And constantly, and this back and forth where God answers him back and says, I'll give you some signs. I'll show you I'll help you speak. Until the end where God gets angry with him. I'm the one that tells people that gives the power of speech to the mouth, and so on. One of the things that we find, so we found a lot of drama there when we were talking about Moshe and Moses. And similar in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah chapter 6, we find his call to prophecy, so to speak, where we have a vision there. And we had the vision. Isaiah didn't just see God, but he sees God sitting on his lofty throne, and he sees these angels, these fiery angels flying above him, speaking words of holiness, holy, holy, holy. And then Isaiah felt so puny, felt so small, felt so little, and felt so impure, and felt as a person who my nation, the people of human beings among whom I live, are so impure. We're so small. I don't belong here. I'm just going to die because I'm in a place that's too much for me. You, God, and the angels are just so much higher. So who am I? And then God sent one of the angels, struck him on the mouth with a coal, and said, "No, you're purified now. You have the ability to speak." And then God announces this big question: who's going to speak? And Isaiah now, with his new charge, with his new knowledge of his feeling humble, yes, but not. He didn't feel so humiliated among the people among the beings. That were so much greater than him. He finally felt that yes, he does have his mouth. He is able to speak. And God said, "Who shall I send?" Isaiah raises his hand and says, "I'll go. Hineni, here I am. Send me." Here, so those are two very different images between what happened by Moshe's call to prayer, to prophecy, and Isaiah and Yeshayahu's call to prophecy. Now we're going to learn Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah's call to prophecy. And there's going to be a lot of differences that you're going to notice immediately. The first one is the most obvious, and we're about to start verse 4. Vayihi dvar Adonai Elai lemar, and the words of God were to me, saying as follows. This is so simple. There's no drama. There's no fiery angels. There's no God sitting on thrones. There's no burning bushes. This is just very, very, very personal. Extremely different than what we had in those other two cases, in those other two examples. God spoke to me, and this is what he said. B'terem etzorcha v'beten yidaticha. Before I even created you in the womb of your mother, I already knew you. Before you were even conceived, I knew you. I knew who you were. I knew what your personality, what your skills are, what your background is. I knew you. V'terem teitzei meirechem miktashticha. And before you were even born, I already set you aside. I already made you holy. I already made you special. Presumably, how is this? First of all, we just studied that he was born into a family of Kohanim, of priests. And God is saying that I gave you so much. Before you were even born, you had so much potential. Before you were even born, you were born to a family of leaders, a family of people that had knowledge, a nation that had so much potential, a nation that has so much closeness to God. Before I even created you, I set you up for success, is what God is saying. And then he continues, Navi lagoyim nisaticha. And you, Jeremiah, you, Yirmiyahu, I made you as a prophet for the nations. I made you as someone who's meant, a Navi is someone who's meant to speak to and influence and bring people back to God. This was a mission that I created for you. This right away brings up the huge question of how could this be that God created him to be a prophet? Isn't there such a thing as free choice, free will? Isn't being a prophet something that a person should have to earn, that a person should have to grow into, that a person should have to work on himself, to live a righteous person, to make the right choices, to gain the knowledge necessary, the knowledge of God necessary to become a prophet? Well, and the thing is that it's not really a contradiction in the famous question of free choice versus God's knowing and God's understanding. Is there predestination? All these philosophical questions which we could spend hours and hours discussing. This point here is and we'll see from the context that there's several reasons why God speaks about how he has known Yirmiyahu. But the first most important thing is that yes, he was given a mission. He was born into a situation to have this mission. That does not in any way, shape, or form negate his choice of saying to God yes or saying to God no. It certainly doesn't negate his choices that he could have made throughout his life, which would have led possibly in the wrong direction to becoming someone who would not have been worthy of being a prophet, someone who would have spent his time, say, in pursuits that were not so holy or not appropriate. He could have made those decisions, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that God set him up for success. But then again, he could have chosen to go in either direction. So it's not really a contradiction. It's not predestination in the sense that he had to turn out and become the great prophet Jeremiah. But it is predestination in the sense that God set him up with the abilities and the skills and the background and the surroundings and the environment so that he can become the one who we now know as the prophet Jeremiah. And yes, and God did make him that. The other thing we're going to find is that we find an incredible intimacy here in these words. And that's the intimacy that God has with Yirmiyahu, that he knows him so well. And he wants to convey this to Yirmiyahu and say, I know you well, so trust me. Trust me when I send you on a mission, even if it's scary, even if it's frightening, even if I'm putting you, it seems like you're going into life-threatening situations. And as we study this book, this will describe the life of Yirmiyahu and the mission of Yirmiyahu. That yes, he did have to go into life-threatening situations, and he did suffer terribly, and he had a lot to be afraid of. But God is saying, I know you, and I know you can handle it. And this is tremendous value, and we're about to see this as we study the next few verses as well. V'omar, and what did I say? What did Yirmiyahu say? Aha, whoa, Adonai Elohim, Lord my God. Whoa, wait a minute. Hinei lo yadati daber. I don't know how to speak. I am not a good speaker. I don't know. I'm not a public speaker. I don't know how to present myself. Ki nar anochi. I'm just a young man. I'm just a boy. Nar means a youth. Here, generally understood, it doesn't mean that he actually was a youth. He probably, He was not, a young man. He was probably at least, 30, 40 years old, depending on or at least in his 20s. But Nair means I'm immature. I'm not old enough, so to speak, for that. I'm not yet distinguished enough to be a speaker. I'm not the kind of person you want to send. We just studied verse 6. So now we're going on to verse 7. Vayomer Adonai Eli, and God said to me, Al tomar nar anochi, don't say that. It's not true. Don't say that you're too young, or you're too immature, or you don't have the skills. And remember, I know you. I made you the prophet. So don't tell me that you don't have the skills. I know very well that you have the skills and you're capable. Ki al kol asher eshlochachot telech. And I know that in every mission I send you on, you will go on that mission. V'al kol asher atzavcha, and that everything that I command you to speak, tidaber, you shall speak. There's a lot of power in these words. God is saying, number one, I know you, therefore I know that you will do it. He's also saying, I know you, but therefore I know that you can do it. So don't tell me that you're too immature, because I know that you can do it. I know that you're capable of doing it. And number three, God is saying, I will be the one commanding you and telling you what to say. So don't be afraid, because it's me. It's coming from me. I know you well, God says, but it's coming from me. And if we all recognize and realize that our missions in life are coming from God, if we chose and we accomplished and achieved those missions and realized and understood that we're fulfilling His will and we're doing good because He is with us and He is behind us, it would give us so much more confidence and strength to do things even when they seem scary, even when they seem like things that are going to bring derision and possibly even violence from other people towards us. But when we know that it's the right thing because we know that God is behind it, we have more strength, and that's what God is telling here to Jeremiah. And therefore, the immediate next words are, after he says this, Al tirom mipnehem, verse 8. Do not be afraid from them, from those people that are going to make fun of you, those people that are going to ridicule you, those people that are going to throw things at you, those people that are going to make you suffer. Don't be afraid of them. Ki itcha ani lahatzilecha. I will be with you to save you from them. Ne'om Adonai, so says God. And then what did God say? He immediately fulfilled His promise. And He said, Vayishlach Adonai es yado. God sent out His hand, Vayaga al pi, and He touched me on the mouth in order to demonstrate, it is my words I am putting in your mouth. You are on my mission. Vayomer Adonai Eli, Heinei, behold, look, you see, Nosati devorai beficha. I have put my words in your mouth. I know you. I know who you are. I know what you're capable of. I know I know everything about you, and I am with you. So be strong. Re'eh, see, God says. This is verse 10. If Gadticha hayom hazeh, today I have appointed you. Yes, you did all that work to achieve the potential that I gave you. I gave you the potential. You achieved it, and therefore now I am giving you the mission. And what is that? I'm giving you a mission al hagoyim, on all of the nations of the world, and on all of the kingdoms of the world. You are a prophet that are going to bring them a message. And this is the summary message of every other message we're going to see in the rest of the book of Jeremiah that goes on for another 52 chapters, right? What is the summary of the message that you're bringing to the world? The following. We're in verse 10. Lintosh v'lintots, which means to uproot and to tear down. Liha'avid, to destroy, v'laharos, and to crush. Livnos, and to build, v'lintoa, and to plant. Now, what does this mean? Clearly, it doesn't mean that Jeremiah is going to go around smashing things and crushing things and then building things and planting things, because that was not his job. His job was to be a prophet, right? What it means is you are here to bring the message of destruction and the message of rebirth, rebuilding, and planting for the future. And this is a very good summary in 6 words of the entire book of Yirmiyahu, the entire book of Jeremiah, and his entire mission. That yes, you are going to bring messages and prophecies of destruction, and you are going to tell people that there will be destruction, there will be suffering, there will be terrible suffering, but you're also going to bring them the message that despite the suffering, and maybe even in many ways because of the suffering, you don't give up. You build and you plan for the future. You always rebuild no matter how many times you're knocked down. And that Yirmiyahu is giving the message that yes, there is destruction coming, but that's not the purpose. That's not what God wants. What God wants is the end result, which is livnos, to build, and lintoa, to plant for the future, to prepare for the future. So I'm going to stop here. We just studied the Yirmiyahu, the Jeremiah's call to prophecy, so to speak. Thank you for studying Jeremiah 1b with me. Looking forward to studying Jeremiah 1c together.